Many of the vehicles which we talk about in this series do have a tendency toward being extreme. They're crazy, overpowered sometimes, or crazy looking, or having insane performance in some kind of way. But then some of the other ones which we talk about, like the Saab 92X or various others like that, are not necessarily quite as crazy, but they're just not as talked about. But at the same time, they are cars which deserve to be talked about more because they are good or interesting or clever or at the very least unique, but in a good way. Because there are plenty of unique cars out there, but that doesn't necessarily make them good. It's pretty easy to make a unique car, just make it look hideous. But that doesn't make it worthwhile to talk about. Now this one is on the rarer side of things, as far as talking about the kind of cars which we have in this series, but is still a production car. Now the car, of course, is a Morgan, you saw that from the title, the Morgan Aero 8 GTN. Now for a lot of you guys, it's probably not a car that you've heard of before, not many people do talk about this car, hence why it's here, and this is a homologation special. Who knew that Morgan had a homologation special? Well, of course, some people do, and 11 people in particular know all too well that they do, because that's how many of these were produced. 11 GTNs were built. Now, the reason why they were built is because in 2002, Morgan wanted to go to the Le Mans. They'd been racing and continued racing in later years in various GT classes with variations of the Aero 8, but a DeWalt Tools-sponsored version ran in the 2002 Le Mans. Unfortunately, due to a number of issues and breakdowns which the car had, it didn't finish the race. They decided after 17.5 hours, over 180 laps run, that it wasn't worth running anymore. They were losing too much time, losing too much distance, and they retired from the race. However, it did still spawn this, the required road variant. They planned to produce 15, as I said, only produced 11. Now the car is fairly similar to the normal Aero 8 in terms of its spec. It's not some 700 horsepower version or anything crazy like that. Although, that would be pretty cool if it did have something like 500 or 600 horsepower, but it doesn't. It's got a 4.4 litre Alpina-tuned BMW V8 engine, so again, similar to the normal Aero 8, especially of this initial generation, and it looks fairly similar in terms of spec. As I said, 333 horsepower. The weight isn't radically different to the car already. It is lighter, but not by a ridiculous amount. And even the performance doesn't seem earth-shattering or necessarily even supercar level in comparison. 0 to 60 is a little bit quicker, around the 4.5 second range, and about 170 miles per hour flat out. And you can even buy one of these today for about £80,000, which of course is a lot of money for a sports car, but at the same time, ironically, that makes it not only one of the rarest homologation specials ever, but also one of the most attainable, because if you think of other homologated Le Mans cars, stuff like the CLK GTR, the Elise GT1, the Porsche GT1, a variety of others, they're not exactly affordable. They tend to be hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions, in some cases. And that's if they'll let you buy it at all. Some of them they won't. The Nissan R390 or the Toyota GT1, good luck trying to buy one of those. But this one, in a weird kind of way, is a much more attainable car. In fact, you can pick them up now for roughly the same kind of price that the MG SVR was when it was new, which, if you put it into that kind of perspective, doesn't sound too bad. Now, the car isn't one which, as I said, will necessarily be talked about ever that much. It's just not that kind of car. This isn't one of those vehicles which will have some kind of revolution down the line where people suddenly notice it and start giving it credit, because it's just not that kind of car. It's a special edition, it's a requirement for the race, but it also serves as being a really nice reminder of Morgan's racing exploits. Because although they're not predominantly known for racing, they do race quite a bit. And even though they don't have the most success of any team out there, it's always nice when a smaller, more plucky team tries to compete against the bigger dogs, because often their cars look more interesting, maybe are more interesting, try ideas which are a bit different, and as far as the cars out on the grid go, there's pretty much nothing else that looks quite like a Morgan. So even though the race car itself wasn't overly successful, at least we have this kind of silhouette of that car's design and its intent for road use. Only 11 produced, relatively attainable, and certainly bespoke. compared to the others. All of them, incidentally, are finished in the exact same paint scheme, this blue with the silver, and they come with both a hard top and soft top, which you can fit and remove as necessary, but understandably most owners tend to leave the hard top on there, because of course it sets the car apart from all of the others, whereas the paint scheme, you could copy that on a normal Aero 8 if you wanted to. The hard top though, that's a little bit harder to come by, as are the 5-spoke rims. So, a special little car in its own way, not a mind-blowing one, but I think one which does deserve a place here, because in the world of beloved homologation Le Mans cars, and many of them are beloved, this one doesn't really get much chatter, and that's kind of a shame, because it's a plucky little underdog, which I think is a pretty cool little sports car. But that's it for this pick. Of course, if you are new to this series, you can check out plenty more episodes by clicking through at the end. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.